Or I could actually just go to that CoEng YouTube channel and get it.
Well, it says we're running live, but it's not going to start actually recording until the 9 o'clock.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I'm on the channel now. I'll see if I see it. So it actually says live now. Let's see.
Do you see me staring at a blank screen?
Yeah, I see.
Do you see me staring at the screen?
I see you with G.
Okay, we'll just go with this, and then we'll just edit if we have to later.
So what I think you're live, but it's just not recording.
The recording starts.
Okay, but it'll start at 9 because that's what I set it at.
Yeah.
Okay, but it'll start at 9.
Yes.
Sounds like you have
Could be her mic. So there's an echo someplace on here. Could it be Discord?
It could have been me because I had the YouTube up. What about now?
Oh, now it's fine.
Yeah, so that was me. So you guys are good. You guys look good. Everything looks good for me.
Audio's okay too?
Yeah, audio sounds great. Gene, can you say something for us?
Sure, I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to the event.
I gotta press this.
Oh, you have to press that?
Yeah.
Can you hear
I
me?
can hear him now. Great.
Okay.
Don't let me forget that.
Awesome.
So you have to push that down to speak all the time?
Yeah. That's what keeps everybody from
Jumping in. Okay.
I just dropped it in. I'm dropping it into the VoIP chat. That link should work. Let me know if it doesn't.
So she just dropped us into.
Yeah.
So those are the folks that are on here now.
Oh, she
Good Lux can see you those.
See, I don't even have my own website up yet. I have to reestablish that and put that back. And
You had one yourself?
I had one when I was actually Decision Insight, and using that as my primary source of income for the I left MSC in May.
Uh-huh.
The financial system collapsed in June. My angel capital went away then.
Now recording.
So that was Craig, right? Wait, so Craig is our recording system here on the site.
Okay.
So how many do we bring on? So this is we're starting to push more. This is a practice for, because we're going to be doing this programming. So the State of the Chain meeting is outbound, going out to the public. And we have a meeting every single day, one for each of the departments.
Yeah, I ended up
Okay.
getting in
Yeah,
on
you're one of
a
those.
couple of those, and I was, didn't intend to disrupt
Oh,
anybody.
no,
but-
we were talking about you at the time. That was kind of funny. So on your background, I'll let you do the your own background, because I don't know too much about it, and I generally try not to do that with military people because I don't want to, I don't want to know too. I had a security clearance too at some point, and I just leave that alone.
No, you can't get into too much of that, but I mean, there's enough.
Mm-hmm. So are we going to have Daryl at the meeting today so he can tell us about the project? I mean, the test program.
Yeah, he's here right now actually. So yeah, he'll be able to share that.
Okay. Are they all down in Richmond, Daryl and Alicia?
They're in Richmond, yeah.
They're in Richmond.
They're coming up on Monday, yeah. So this is our bench. I mean, we got a lot of people who we could tap to do different things. So Thomas just comes on. So Marcus is our operations officer, co-creator. He's our just resident genius. He's a German in Japan. Alicia is our CMO. Alan is a guy who hangs out with us. Thomas is Michelle is our CTO, and Thomas is our marketing guy. No, he's at Jacobs Engineering. He's our big insider on AEC. Well, hello everybody. This is Dan Robles, and I'm here with Gene Allen, And this is the State of the Chain meeting for August 31st, 2018. And what I like to do is a lot of things happened this week, and I didn't make an agenda, so to speak, but each one of our departments is finalizing the two documents we have on the table right now. It's a 1055, which is the initiative for raising our first round of capital. That has been reached largely a conclusion in terms of what we're going to put forward into the space. So we're just wrapping that up, and then we'll be launching that campaign publicly next week. And I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on that. It wasn't easy getting that out. And then we had another set of internal issues that needed to get settled, and documentation and contracts that are going to establish us as a corporation. We finalized paperwork for the IEBC, so we are a corporation, and we've got everything's in order legally. So these are all the things that we've been working on this week. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Thank Alicia for always getting me out of trouble when I get stuck into YouTube tech stuff, and I'd like to thank everybody who did a lot of work this week. We had a big step forward in our test project. The blockchain is live, and it's being, we can interact with it now, and we can start modifying it and making it work for us. And then there's a lot of things out in the world which are just pointing in the direction of the solution we're providing. In terms of what are people questioning what are blockchains for, and what are blockchains, period. And we've got a solution which allows somebody to just walk onto a blockchain and see one work. I don't think there's anything out there right now other than Steam itself, which provides that capacity. So we'll be hearing a little bit more about how that test program is going. We're learning more about how we're going to communicate with the public. We have our internal meetings on Monday through Thursday, and this meeting is focusing more and more on an outward communication. This is how we talk to the public about what we're doing, and to anybody who wants to come on board. So I think everybody who knows what we're going to say today doesn't necessarily have to be here except to make presentations, but is speaking to a public which will soon be wanting a lot of information about us. So we're sort of preceding that data set. So thank you very much for all your assistance. And let me thank Blockhouse for your endless support and your help for organizing us and helping us put all the invisible components together, the important things, the important business things, the important legal things and regulatory things that we need to be successful. So this morning I'd like to start with a quick presentation, a quick interview of a very fascinating person who I've encountered through another one of our lectures. This is why we do these lectures, these events, so we can meet these important people. But Gene Allen is the person who organized our talk. The reason why we're in DC right now is because we're going to be speaking with the MIT Harvard Alumni Club in DC on Tuesday. And that's going to be a fair amount of people. Some very smart people, very inquisitive people from a very broad and diverse background. And we have to explain ourselves to them and explain the opportunity that this is, what we're trying to accomplish and how it benefits society, and try to get them engaged in this mission that these engineers, these rogue engineers are on. So that's the. I want everybody to meet Gene. He's done something very similar to, he said he had an experience in Latin America, which is very similar to my experience in Latin America, and similar to Thomas's, and similar to even Ari, his experience in Venezuela. Gene's experience was in Chile when he saw kind of the end game. This is what happens when the currency does collapse, when things kind of hit the fan. And then how does society adjust to that? So it's sort of that I think Ari talks about the John Campbell story where the young guy goes out and sees the world, and there's a big calamity, gets involved with that, and through entire lifetime is fighting that battle, and then he emerges victorious and comes out and comes back home, the homecoming, and tells people, here's what I've seen, here's what can happen, here's how we can avoid that from happening again. So he shares a very, very similar story to myself and to Ari and to Thomas and anybody who's actually and I'm sure many of the people in this channel who have gone off and seen the other side of the world, how the other side of the coin fits. So anyway, I'd like to introduce Gene Allen, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his interest in our project, about our interest in him, and his deep insights. And just maybe we'll take 15, 20 minutes to talk to discuss this, and then we'll go into the usual directors reports, and maybe 20 minutes there, and then we'll finish up with some Q&A and see how that goes. All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. This is an honor. It's very exciting to me just to listen to you and to hear everything you're saying, because it fits, and I'm pleased to let this group know as much know about me, and look forward to future interactions. I was born a country boy. I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1956. Lived in a town of 450 people, 5 square miles, and my father was a factory worker. He was a machinist. We built gears for Bucyrus Erie at the time. My mother was a homemaker. I was born when she was 18. I was the first of 6 kids. Family was very important. I was fortunate that I had 2 sets of grandparents raising me as well as my parents. So it was a great childhood growing up. I was in something of a cocoon, but I wanted to understand and learn about life. My grandfather was an engineer on ore boats, carrying iron ore from Lake Superior down to ports in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and iron ore go down to Pittsburgh. So part of that whole steel industry.
Right.
My dad made mining shovels, so that whole industrial base was something that I didn't appreciate and understand at the time. But
the irony is incredible. Mining shovels in the crypto space. Oh my goodness, we're gonna laugh about this.
Well, his company is going out of business because they didn't make the transition into technology from cables and pulleys to pneumatics.
Okay.
A simple transition.
Sure.
The company couldn't make it. Japanese put them out of business because Deere was just a small company at the time. So anyway, I took my first trips outside my world with my grandfather on the Great Lakes when I was 4.
Okay.
And then went with him every summer. So I knew I liked going to sea with my grandfather. I just that it was just fun. I liked the engine room. I liked driving the ship even better.
Right.
So when it came time to go into college, and I was the first in my family to go to college, and I was told I needed to go to college. I had to get good grades. Then when I got older, I was told, you need to get a scholarship because we can't afford to send you to college.
Right.
So I decided I'd go to the Naval Academy.
Okay.
Because I could see paying for the Naval Academy, spending 5 years doing something I knew I'd like to do, going to sea, to pay for college.
That makes sense.
So when I was in 8th grade, I set my sights on going to the Naval Academy. And my guidance counselor said, well, if you don't get in the Naval Academy, you should apply to ROTC scholarships.
Right.
Get scholarships to go to different schools. And MIT and RPI, Cornell and Columbia were schools I applied to just as a backup to the Naval Academy. So I was pretty sure I was going to be an engineer when I was accepted by the American Field Service to be an exchange student. And this was the summer between my junior and senior year in high school, 1973. And I was selected to go to Chile. And
this is in 1970, in the 70s, right?
In 1973.
This is during the reign of Pinochet.
No, this was Salvador Allende.
Oh, it was before.
This was before.
Oh,
okay.
Goodness.
This is what gave rise to Pinochet.
Oh gosh.
The
irony's killing me.
and so I don't speak Spanish. Okay. And I'm going down just our summer, their winter. They're in school. I went to school long enough to make good friends. Went to an all Catholic all boys school, and I was interested to see. Well, I'm going to a Marxist country, find out what the other perspective in the world is, because in the Cold War, we're growing up in the Cold War, and we won World War II, and we're great. But Vietnam was going on at the time. There's lots of questionings in the 60s. What is and I knew I was getting right wing propaganda.
Right.
And I wanted to see what's the balance. And,
sure.
We went to school for 2 weeks in Chile. After that, the school went on strike, along with the rest of the private sector. against the government. There was no bread. There were lines blocks long, no ipon.
Right.
And they just didn't have bread. I was told if I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I'd be shot because I was an American.
Right.
Just because I was an American. The country was totally polarized between those who looked at the United States as a model and those who looked at Cuba as a model.
Right.
Okay. Allende did not enforce any laws.
Right.
Part of the reason was there were commercials on television where they were encouraging people to expropriate property. They didn't actually encourage, if you didn't have property, to go get the property from people who did have it. Well, you can imagine the backlash.
Sure.
The country was totally polarized. There was a right-wing coup attempt while I was down there on June 29th. It was an English class, which was one of the classes that I actually excelled in.
Yeah, I bet.
But the padre basically told everybody that you don't speak Spanish in English class. Some kid comes running in, shouting in Spanish. I look at him and think, oh, he's got an F for the day.
Sure.
Padre starts shouting in Spanish. Everybody gets up out of their chairs, going, commotion breaks down. A good friend of mine, probably my best friend in the world, Fernando Barrientos, sits down with me and says, there's just been a coup. We're in the middle of a civil war. This was my second week, the end of my second week in Chile.
Wow.
After that,
wow, that's crazy.
That night there were 4 fire sirens that went off, and I was thinking like I was in London during the place.
Sure.
There were 4 fire bombings, and what ended up happening was the coup was put down by the army. There was just one regiment who revolted, took over a radio station, made these broadcasts. The army was true to its constitution, put it down, and so life continued.
Right.
Right after that, the private sector went on strike. Last month, the private sector went on strike. The bombings increased, although they were bombings that didn't try to kill people.
Right.
They were civil terrorism.
It's just sort of like just blow up, get everybody out of the place and blow it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
The bombings that night were after they found out that the revolution had not stopped and the army had put down the people who had revolted. The bombings were of a store, a school. They were all places that weren't inhabited at the time. And you could usually tell who did the bombing by who the target was. And you had right-wing extremists and left-wing extremists doing the bombings.
Okay.
So
then what you did then is you pretty much spent the rest of your life trying to figure out why this happened.
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm trying to articulate it. Because what happened to me in Mexico wasn't that severe, but I went and got an MBA because I didn't have the language to talk about what happened. I saw this stuff and I couldn't articulate it. So I had to go learn the language of business to understand why that happened.
What's happened. So I'm seeing all this, and we were actually living every day like it might be the last day we left for a while. But for a 17-year-old kid, was basically, if you're 17, a boy, you're looking for parties. So we'd go find places where we could drink and dance with women, and that was what we did every day, knowing that we might not, the next day we might be running for the Argentine border or fighting, and there was lots of other stories.
So that's kind of like the Latin American fatalism. You ask some guy why he's climbed that electrical post and how come you're not afraid of dying. He's like, well, it's my day, But right now I'm going to get this sucker done. It's kind of like it's a very Latino thing, right?
To some degree, but what I was amazed at was the amount of support for the United States. We sang, the Star Spangled Banner, and it was just, the applause, the emotion of the class that I was,
So the United States has an idea.
Yeah, it was the hope. Literally, it was the hope for that portion of the population, and that we want to aspire to be like the United States, to have the standard of living, you have the institutions and
Mhm.
the community, the culture. That was, of course, that was one part of the population. So, and anyway, I'd already decided I was going to be an engineer, so
Mhm.
I was going, ended up getting into MIT. My dad didn't understand why I turned down the Naval Academy to
Right.
go to some school he'd never heard of.
Right.
Uh,
Massachusetts, what state? That's a little state, isn't it?
yeah. So one of the first classes I took though was a political science class to
Mhm.
learn, understand what had happened to me in Chile
Right.
and why what I saw happened. Professor Mitchell was a Marxist.
Mhm.
He told the class what happened in Chile. I'd raise my hand and say, "That's not what I saw in Chile."
Right.
The class devolved into debates primarily between me and him,
Mhm.
because going through this life-threatening experience, and seeing what I saw, and trying to understand it, and have somebody say, "This is what happened to you," and it wasn't even reflecting as to what I saw.
That's kind of the place where a lot of us are today, is looking at that. The world is telling, everybody's telling, well, this is the way the world works. I'm like, well, no, we don't think so. I mean, our observation differs somewhat. Could you show me that cover from that MIT magazine? Because we touched on a point which was really, okay, so here's the picture. I'm not sure if you can see it. I don't have a monitor, so I can't see it. But it's called Blockchain, and there's two squares, like a Venn diagram. One says hype, one says hope. And and in the space in the middle, they said, "Block, the future is right here." So what we're trying to get at. So there's an analogy here between, blockchain as being the hype of it all, and then the hope of it all, and then what you saw in Latin America about the American ideal. There's the hype of it, and then there's the hope of it, and then we're somewhere stuck in the middle. How are we going to get to that without having to devolve to a situation like what happened in Chile, or what happened
in Venezuela today.
or what happened in Mexico? Nobody saw that. I mean, it's like
Venezuela today is like what I was living in Chile when I was living there.
And the world doesn't see that. It's going to happen over and over until I'm not going to say it's going to happen to us, but whatever happens, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be comfortable for anybody. So what we're looking for is how are we going to get through all this without crashing. Does it have to really crash?
Having a path.
I mean, does it really have to?
I mean,
can we avoid this, you think?
I think we can, but what we need to do is recognize that what we have today that we didn't have in 1973 was the communications, the infrastructure. Right. We've got a lot more, just the population of people. We've got a lot more smart people, a lot more, and I believe it's the responsibility of intelligentsia to provide direction so that the average person has economic opportunity.
But you also spoke about something about the institutions. Okay, having the well, the difference now is we got these institutions in place, and a lot of the hype on blockchain is going to replace a lot of those institutions, and a lot of the hope is it's going to replace those kinds of institutions as well. Let's focus on that, because the problem we're having now is some of the governance issues behind our blockchain. How are we going to who's going to run our witness nodes, for example? Should it be the people who created it? Should it be academia? Should it be the average Joe? Should it be like completely decentralized, so we're divorced from the witness process? Or should it be somehow, maybe that would stabilize our institutions, using these witness nodes to stabilize our institutions? How important do you think
I think those institutions are critical, and having trust in those institutions, having trust that what is being said is real. And Professor Mitchell, and after I went through this class, and my final briefing with him, he wanted me to major in political science because he didn't feel there was enough of my perspective in the discipline, which was truly admirable.
Sure.
But I was at MIT, so but the engineering piece we can go into later. But having institutions, it's the trust in our institutions that provided the foundation for democratic society. Francis Fukuyama has written a lot about this. And it's that trust and having confidence that we are doing things that are in our community, world community's best interest.
So MIT and Harvard are, in fact, institutions. They've become to that point. And we're about to go talk to these people. How do we approach This crowd of people is kind of random. They're in DC. I mean, it's pretty. It's not. I can't say they're random. This is a pretty directed group. How do we talk to them?
Basically, using the foundation of engineering as truth and physics as truth is something everybody can agree with.
Right. I guess so.
My high school chemistry teacher basically said, you can break human laws. You don't break the law of gravity.
Yeah, we got a couple of 100,000 tons of concrete bouncing over our head and a bunch of sticks poking into the ground. You'd think that would be enough to convince people.
Well, especially after, when you realize what entropy does and
Sure.
aging does, and everything ages, everything changes, and change is natural.
Mhm.
And the way the world really works is it follows nature,
Mhm.
and nature's not always pretty.
Uh-huh.
And
I think you use that analogy like you're piling sand up, and there's always going to be some shifting at the edges at about 53 degrees. I think there's a law for that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the entropy. In order to get higher, you got to kind of lose some, but it builds the base along the way.
So
That's kind of the nature of entropy,
Yeah.
and we have to be able to accommodate that entropy in some way. I think maybe money artificially does it in the form of inflation, but that's pretty artificial now. It's not going to carry the weight anymore. We got to come up with a new form of accounting for that entropy.
Exactly. What building has stood the test of time for thousands of years that still exists?
Right.
The Great Pyramids.
Right. It's shaped exactly like.
And there's a reason for that. It's built in an environment where it doesn't age well. And the biggest problem with the pyramids was, people basically took the outside building stones off to build the mosques in Cairo, which was the same problem that happened. The same thing that happened to the Colosseum in Rome. It was built to build St. Peter's.
That's funny. So we're going to take a few pieces of the old infrastructure and we're going to build our own. Right?
Well, have a foundation that you can build on that is credible, that people can, have trust in.
And that makes a lot of sense because there are a lot of things that do work very, very well. In the United States, in our institutions, that work great, and it's sort of the outliers that are kind of influencing a lot. And well, anyway, there's just so much to go with that.
Building trust, and I was spoiled in Rickover's nuclear navy, where we operated a complex system.
Okay, so you're in nuclear propulsion. Okay, so there's consequences there. And interaction.
And what we had to do was put together teams of operators who were qualified. And you wanted to make sure those teams were qualified. So because think about being on a warship and a nuclear powered. Okay, if you're in a situation where you're in potential battle, you need to keep the power to the system to fight the ship.
Right.
But at the same time, that reactor, if you have a problem, could
sink you.
Could not only sink you, but in the meltdown, you could lose the ship. You could, lose people around the ship. I mean, there was a lot of responsibility in just making sure the reactor was safe, but you had reliable power, and you had to really know the systems, and you had to train the systems. So I was a training officer after I went through new construction and trained teams to do that. And that really provided me with that competency, that capability to, put together teams to know if I was being fed a line or not relative to engineering. You ask a few questions, you can see whether the person really knows what they're talking about or not.
So you're talking about that peer-to-peer vetting.
That peer-to-peer vetting, and that was critical, and also taught me how to learn, how to learn processes, how to understand how different things fit together.
Right.
So I learned that, both from MIT and the Navy, and learning how to learn, or it was, it served me well, because I've ended up putting together collaborative R&D programs to get new technologies commercialized.
You're getting me. He's getting me my brain going, because there's so many things that we're doing here. That the analogy is.
That's my book.
Okay. This is the book. Hold up to the camera so we can see. So the analogy is pretty clear that that we have we've got a very similar situation. I mean, it's a nuke plant. You gotta keep the power going.
Well, society is a complex system.
Right.
It's just a bigger complex system, and arguably more complex. But you can still manage it. And in reality, we've managed society, our whole existence, and we figured out how to do it. Now we haven't necessarily been optimal at doing it or best at doing it, but we have. We're here.
So you're an optimist.
Well,
You better be, because there's no other way.
well,
No. I'm an internal optimist. I totally think we can pull out of this tailspin.
well,
I think we can fix it, and we can make it a billion times better
that
than it ever was
we're
before.
here. In the 60s, I was worried about World War III coming, and we were supposed to have World War III by 1984. I think there was a movie about it.
Right.
And it was, 2000.
We'll delay that. Let's I got to postpone
So-
that World War
so
III thing.
We've done a phenomenal job of just, maintaining our existence. We're supporting a population that nobody thought could be supported. More people are living better than ever before.
Interesting.
We've got tools in place that we've never had before, but people need to understand and recognize that the reality of nature is the foundation, and build on that.
Okay, so what we're going to do is stop at that point so we can get to the rest of the meeting. But thank you so much for that insight. I'm very happy that you're talking to us and helping us, guiding us in our, because we're sandboxing all of this in a little micro world that we're trying to use.
And this is one of the best directions I've heard or seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there. A lot of people
yeah.
trying to.
And but there's a foundation here that makes sense. It fits, and I want to try to help you as best I can. So when I heard your presentation in Cleveland, I said, "Hey, I've got an audience for you that needs to hear this."
Okay.
And I'd like to, hopefully get the group on Tuesday influencing the people up in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
So those institutions are saying, yeah, this is the type of thing we need to do. Supporting pilots, doing lots of pilots, because you don't know what's going to work or what's not going to work. But you try to do the thing that you think is best going to work. Try it for 6 months. Learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
If it scales, it's going to go. Then you just keep doing those types of iterations until you find ones that scale and work.
Oh, great! It's good to have a friend here in Washington D.C. That's for certain. So thank you very much, Gene. What we're going to do is, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions? I mean, I hate to delay until the end for a few tight questions if there's anybody out there. Did that presentation, was it well heard? Did everybody hear it okay? Oh, I see Alicia and Michelle typing. Yes, it was wonderful. Okay, thank you. We got some really good feedback so far. Okay, I can't see the side of the screen because, one, I'm probably not as adept as you guys are in seeing it. Let me see. Let me check the side here. Oh my goodness, it's a lot. Okay, there's a lot of questions. A lot of great comments. Great presentation. Very interesting.
And I can work on those.
Okay.
I'll take a commitment to answer any questions anybody has and feedback on using the tool. This afternoon or tomorrow.
This is your team, guys. This is us. We're a team now, and we're all out here fighting this battle. And everyone's picking up a shovel and taking a chunk of this mountain, and it's just a great feeling. So with that said, we got some really optimistic news coming out of the different directors. Does marketing want to start first? Or who wants to start first? I guess marketing or anybody. I'm just all amped up on the conversation, so I can't really focus. So just take over from here if you guys don't mind.
I can do a quick marketing spiel right now if anybody is available. Let me turn the sheets. So this week has been very, very eventful. Thank you so much, Gene, for joining us. We've been really trying to get the YouTube streams going, and you've been a great help. Dan, you're the best. So as you know, Dan is in DC right now, and he's speaking on the 4th at an event that Gene so wonderfully has put together and has invited him to. We've also received the award for Best in Infrastructure for Block Awards. So that will be something that we're getting involved with very soon. Dan will need somebody to go along with him. So we don't know if that will be Thomas or Bradley, but that's something that we will have to discuss internally and externally as far as who will be attending that event as well. Randall has provided information about Global Blockchain Summit, which will be in Colorado. Luckily, Thomas has already reached out to them, and so he will be speaking at that event. But Randall will also be in attendance there. So if anybody's going to be in the Colorado area, it would be wonderful if you could attend or just be in the area to maybe co-eng with Randall and Thomas around that time. That would be wonderful. I do want to encourage anybody, if you have heard of any particular events, summits, meetups, conferences that deal with the realm of what we're working on, please reach out to us about those so we can vet those and see which are the best that we can attend and be at, because we're really trying to make an effort to be boots on the ground, hands out, and just kind of really get actionable with just meeting people and getting out there. So if you have any events, please share those via Discord, or you can email us at contact@coengineers.io. You can really reach us at contact@coengineers.io for any reason in particular. If you're finding us online just right now for the first time, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you are checking us out on Discord, our main handle is @CoEng Blockchain. That's @CoEng Blockchain. And that can be used for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. So again, that's @CoEng Blockchain. So if you're listening now, I would encourage you to jump to any one of those platforms that you favor and go ahead and follow us, because we're going to really be getting out there, especially next week with Dan. So please look forward to seeing us be streaming more next week on YouTube as well as Instagram, and to find out what we're doing, because we're going to be keeping you up to speed while he's in DC. Some things that we need right now would be any support in help in content marketing or content creation, maybe creating some graphics, anybody that might be interested in writing. Again, you may be an engineer, you may be an entrepreneur, you may just be a maker or builder, but you know what you know. And we want to hear what you are working on or hear what you have been doing. And or if you want to write about something that we're working on or we're doing, we would love for that. Randall has been wonderful enough to send over one of his interns to help us out, a young man named Ty, who has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. He's actually a student at the University of Georgia. And he will be looking into getting more students involved in what we're doing from the engineering department, as well as those that are in the business department. So if you're someone who works with students and you're in academia, please share what we're doing with your students, because we would like to get those get students involved. And so one thing that we're looking to do right now in particular is to share stories. So if you have students or you're a young entrepreneur or you're a maker, please share your stories with us. So if you're co-enging with people, connecting, collaborating, getting together in your community, in your engineering, you're making things happen, tell us how you're making impact, because we would like to share those stories and then find a way to bring you resources so that you can continue to co-eng in your communities. So in terms of some of the activities that we have going on in marketing right now is, again, we have these YouTube streams. So please check us out every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. You can go back and look at these streams later. Please feel free to. And then if you have any questions about what you've seen in past streams, please bring them up to us. Please join our Discord and ask those questions, because that's why we're here. Right now in marketing, we're working on different sales assets for the sales crew. We're graphically designing the 1055 document for mass distribution, but that mass distribution will be internally. So that's an effort so that we can then fund these efforts through the IEBC, which is the Integrated Engineering Blockchain Consortium. So if you know anybody who is looking for projects to hop on and or support, please reach out to us. And one of the last things that we've got going is we have a rolling glossary that's in the making. This glossary is filled with terms that we will be using internally to communicate, as well as externally to communicate some of our messages. And that's also so that we have a level playing field in terms of what it is some of these things that we're talking about are. So that glossary can be found on Discord. And so we do have a marketing server in Discord. So if you join the regular IEBC Discord, that will have an invite link to the bottom of this video in the description area. Please join that Discord, and then you will be able to join the marketing Discord as well, which will open you up to the room, everything we have going on into the messaging internally and externally. And there is another Discord that has just been created by Daryl, the technology server. So you will be able to connect directly with getting hands-on with the development of the chain and things of that nature. And Daryl and or Michelle can touch on that a bit more if you would like to join the technology server and get more hands-on with the technology. If you would like to be more hands-on with the marketing, please join our IBC Discord, and I can direct you to that marketing server as well. And remember, we have contact@coengineers.io. And if you have any events, summits, meetups, whatever the case, if you're in a local area and you would like Dan, Thomas, or anybody in our co-engineers to join your meetup group and talk to your group, or if you're at a company and you would like somebody to come in and talk to your dev team or your design team or whatever the case, please reach out to us, because we are more than open to attending your events, your meetings, and things of the like. And that's all I have for marketing. But if there are any questions, please reach out to me.
Because we're going to be, the biggest strength is going to be less developed companies who don't have the institution. Thank you very much, Alicia. Who's next? Thomas or Marcus?
I think Alicia did a good job. But one thing that we did was we're making a graphic interface.
That was the kind of model
I don't think he's pushed the button.
To allow us to be able.
You're not good at getting through, Marcus. So what I think, like this
Okay,
guy,
I'm just gonna mute myself
Carlos
because the
Gonzalez,
audio's
he's the guy who worked with in Mexico. And
messing up.
because they don't have the institutions, this would replace. Whereas here, we're going to use this.
Oh, maybe I can pick up in that case
So-
from what I heard Marcus starting to describe. And Marcus, if you have a better mic, you step in and that would be fine.
He's our CTO.
But I think I overheard Marcus describing
He's got a
that
PhD
we
in aerospace.
have just expanded our internal
For
testing
now.
this week. And the part of that test process will be onboarding additional users to the test group, and for them to actually test in two approaches. One is through a test plan that we're actually formalizing, and we're asking each of the users to actually go through and actually perform certain actions to ensure that certain behaviors are working well. And then a second approach, which is more open-ended, for users to actually just try to various features which we have not elaborated in the test plan to identify any misbehaviors that we have not yet identified, and then that way we'll log those issues and queue them up to rectify them. And can elaborate on some more technical details if that's of interest to anyone, but I think otherwise I'll pass it on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Michelle. That's just brilliant. We're really excited. This is a huge milestone for us. And let us know what type of talent and backgrounds you are interested in as we get deeper into development. We'd like to try some folks from Latin America, local people who are familiar. So anything, but you're running a program, let us know how we can help you in finding those testers.
That'll be great, especially with the way you just mentioned it, to expand it to different types of users. That'll be very helpful for the testing.
Okay, and I can give a quick 5-minute sales update.
He works at Jacobs Engineering.
Really wonderful comments today by everyone, and I want to take just a step back to just highlight some of the things that are driving the coordination between sales and marketing on our effort here. There have been some recent reports and surveys that have come out by important actors such as the U.S. federal government and Deloitte. And I'm just going to sort of highlight what they've said just to remind everyone who's listening that blockchain is in many ways sort of at an inflection point right now, that there's a shifting sense of momentum that at least this is what we're picking up from Deloitte. It's something that we've always been anticipating here, our group. But the fact that mainstream consultants, big consultants, are beginning to announce that message is significant, and it does that we do have to be poised for what's about to happen in the broader market, and even as we are leading some of that movement ourselves. In the federal government, it's important to realize that General Services Administration has come out really on record as saying that they believe blockchain will be a catalyst for a tectonic shift in the way businesses are currently organized, movement towards decentralized organizations. And that's something also that we've been aware of for a very long time and have discussed. But it's an important thing it's an important message to take with us in our consortium fundraising strategy, where we are targeting 5 insurance firms and 5 commercial banking institutions. The idea that decentralization, especially for engineering firms, is something that's potentially very disruptive. It is at the same time an enormous opportunity to move from traditional hierarchical type organizations to something that's more networked. And there are a lot of powerful arguments for why networking can unleash productivity and enable engineering firms to operate more efficiently and to win more work. It's something that involves a little bit of reframing of what the central operational paradigm is for engineering firms in particular. They're really knowledge asset firms. They are firms that manage the flow and the supply chain, really, of knowledge assets to bring talent to the right place at the right time at a reasonable cost. And that's the constant struggle that AEC firms are faced with. And if it's not done well, it can even encroach on their solvency, certainly their competitiveness, long before their solvency comes into question.
And you're telling this to IBM now, right?
And you know, it's something that the whole peer-to-peer model that we are developing here is unique in the landscape that we're working in, because we're working with, at least in our sales effort, in our consortium model, we are working with enterprises that traditionally, well, if you can speak of tradition in this very fast-moving market, over the last year or so, when they've been investigating blockchain models, a lot of it is enterprise to enterprise type disintermediation and decentralization. But if you actually want to look at the very atomic scale of how engineering work is done, it is actually individual engineers. And that's where the knowledge assets come from. The whole project, CoEngineers, is really to develop this sort of a tapestry, a rolling tapestry of knowledge, which can be developed, is cultivating knowledge networks assisted eventually by AI. And we have an alpha chain that's out there right now. We began testing yesterday. Initial use case is going to center on something to start up the greater idea of our white paper, which I'm not going to try to describe now, but to have a micro work platform and marketplace. The actual ability to publish content. One engineer can ask another engineer a question and receive responses, and then there's an exchange of tokens. It's a very atomic level, simplistic, very simple sounding sort of unit business process. Can be built and scaled up into far more complex activities. But we're just beginning the very early stages of testing and how that interaction goes and experimenting with different protocols. And that's something we hope to take to our clients, which initially will be large engineering firms. And some of the benefits that we're explaining in our sales effort is that they'll have a front row seat in the development of a blockchain ecosystem that spans the entire infrastructure market, which is vast. It's incredibly fragmented, but some estimates have greenfield construction as high as $8 trillion a year globally. That doesn't even include the O&M expenses of running existing infrastructure that has been built over the last 5 decades. There's also a refrain among these large companies, these large principals, that they don't have access to any blockchain developer talent. We can bring that access, and that's an important differentiator, and that makes first movers in this area more competitive. There is an early mover advantage if you safely sandbox networked corporate organization. Really at the core of future operations, if you believe what the US federal government is saying in this movement from hierarchies to more network structures, and if you believe what Deloitte is saying, and a lot of these big actors now for the first time. There are many other advantages that we're highlighting, and we're going to begin approaching these large engineering firms, banks, and insurance companies with this message. We think we're at an inflection point. The timing is right to begin communicating this message, and that's what sales is going to be focused on over the next 6 weeks. So that pretty much ends a quick summary of what sales is all about in CoEngineers. I'll end it there.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And the thing that I was showing you was stochastic models that Gene is showing me. He's worked in this area too, and it's the complex math. It's the way it shows up on the graph tells us everything we need to know. So it's important that we do have the data in that right format, and then the intelligence just comes off the database. We set it up right, and then the data comes right off in the correct form, and we can gain enormous business intelligence. So thank you so much. It's all parts of the puzzle are fitting together. So we've got 12 minutes. Any questions? Any ideas? Any thoughts? Things we ought to work on?
Oh, I have a report. If you.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry, Daryl. I apologize. I'm just I don't have my notes in front of me. So go ahead.
No, it's completely fine. First, I'd like to thank you and also Gene for having this very engaging conversation. I think it's really important to bring on people that have various different skills and experiences within this industry. So basically, what I'm tasked with is making sure that we are internally sharing information in a way that's giving us the right momentum to move forward. So what my focus is the pathways, processes, and protocols. And the pathways are basically the ideas that we come up with, and the processes, they're basically allows us to assess the feasibility of those ideas, and then the protocols are then implemented, which then turns into the culture within our organization. So updates, the testnet is up, and then also, as everyone is exclaiming, this is a great milestone for us. So we will be uploading or getting testers for the chain very soon. I know Hayden sent me his information, so we'll be getting him some password information, so he'll be able to get into that fairly soon. So we do have a platform that we're working with to store information and distribute information internally, which is Monday.com. So we will be going to each of the directors to then extract information so that we can figure out the usability of it across teams. So that's really important. Dan was speaking about how his son is on the soccer team, and before the practice, everyone just kind of comes together. They speak, they talk about like each roles, and then they just hop out there on the field, and everyone knows what to do. So that's basically what I'm trying to enforce within our community, and between the teams. We all just can come together, converse about what we are doing individually, and then that will hopefully empower us individually and as a team to move forward. So that's really important. Monday.com is really good for tracking progress, which then also allows us to increase effectiveness as a moving body. So that's really important as well. So we're working on the roadmap, the overall roadmap. Marcus, myself, and also co-creator is helping with that as well. And in addition to that, there's the 10-5-5 initiative that we're putting some graphics around, and that will be finished by the end of the weekend. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So Gene said something really important that I wanted to point out, and it's something I've been told about as far as, and everyone is talking about as far as like the communication between the institutions and the engineers, the professionals, and then also the innovators. So that is really important, and that's also something that I've been sort of focusing on. Basically, an engagement engine for the communication between the organizations and the quote unquote little guys, or the big little guys, which are the engineers and innovators. So if we can create an external communication engine using a lot of different game mechanics, this will take off at an extremely alarming rate. In theory. So we also have GitHub, private repositories, so that information is then uploaded as far as the code is concerned. So then we're able to collaborate using that as well. The front end, phase 1 is happening right now. So most likely, or hopefully, we'll be able to have a nice branded first phase of the chain fairly soon. As far as interns, I would love to have possibly we have that talent that is listening, possibly some web developers, a person that's good at graphic designer, and also particularly communications ninja would be amazing to help me kind of collect information and distribute it correctly. But I think that's it. And again, thanks to everyone for tuning in.
Thanks a lot, Daryl. Your energy and you're very, very inspiring. What you and Alicia and everybody are doing with these different directorships is great. I mean, I can go off and do this stuff because the ship is being driven correctly and done right. So thanks a lot, everybody. Any other questions?
Oh, Dan, there was one question that I had posted up in Discord for Gene, and I guess it's a little bit related partly to this discussion about hype versus hope, and also versus
Any other questions?
Thank you.
trust in individuals and institutions. I don't know if you can read that question. And if not, I can just speak it out loud.
Yeah, just restate it. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Sure. In view of trust in trust in individuals, and especially in an engineering context, I was wondering about Gene's thoughts about how do individuals develop trust in other individuals and their claims and validations of such claims. What are maybe some essential ingredients to do that, especially in a world where many times you may not be seeing a person, you may not see someone in person, and so they might be new to you. So how do you develop that trust?
That's a very important piece. It's a challenge. The way we did it in the nuclear Navy was people were qualified. You went through a very rigorous qualification process. And then you had to maintain your qualification so that you were a knowledgeable expert in what you were talking about. And basically there were ways, I've always found ways to talk to people or ask questions and be able to quickly validate or verify whether they were talking from experience and understanding what they were talking about, or whether they were just talking. That's easy to do in Washington because a lot of people talk here but have no understanding about what they talk about. So I've had a lot of experience in being able to, personally identify, whether somebody's credible or not, based on what they're saying and doing. And if you can't explain something to your mother, you don't know it well enough. And that's part of,
So it's sort of like social crypto keys.
Yeah,
Right?
there
So
you go.
I have to in a computer, I have to show you my crypto key to get past that door. But in reality, I've got to demonstrate I got to use a few keywords that I mean, you could fool me in a second. If I'm not an ME, you can figure that out right away. So it's that social crypto key that I'm thinking that
Yeah.
maybe that's what we're trying to establish.
And that's a big part of it. And I used to be qualified to run nuclear propulsion plants. I'm no longer qualified. I'm no longer proficient, but I know I can tell if somebody
you have an
is.
opinion. Yeah, you have an opinion.
Yeah, and I can generally tell whether somebody's blowing smoke or whether they're credible. And
so it's a layer. It's a layer upon the stack. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the whole thing, but it's a layer.
But if you can draw down as to why, why is this accurate? Why is this correct?
If somebody handed you a transaction record which was on a blockchain, which is indelible, it was cast in time and validated by other people, would you have a tendency to believe the transaction record, or would you still have to go through an elaborate qualification process?
Yeah. I tend to believe the transaction record
if you understand the process.
Understand the process, yeah. And I'm one of those people that generally trust people to start with until
proven otherwise.
Yeah.
How close are we getting to an answer to that question?
Yeah, that's helpful, and I think that ties in with discussions that we've had also about so certification, right? And then I guess of an individual, and then you would have to trust that certification, I guess, authority, and then so I guess then that pulls back the layer one step, right? And like you would have to somehow trust the certification authority to start with, I guess.
So one of the things we're talking about, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
So if there are certain institutions like the NCES or the NSPE who would be the super validators, or so we're trying to keep the existing institutions that do work very well. Underwriters Laboratory, the ISO systems and so forth. There's things that do work really well. Now, how do we preserve that and amplify it somehow and empower it without without displacing? I mean, so that's just part of it.
Yeah, I don't think we can displace. The key value currency is really
the institutions,
individual intellect, and it's that collected in those institutions. Because any organization, the value in that organization are the people in that organization, and making sure they're, value and providing value in their community.
So let me ask a question for you guys. What would you think if the validation of a certain percentage of the witness nodes were to go to key institutions which happen to work very well, or maybe rotate among a number of institutions as a function of time? What does that do to enhance the conversation?
There's no question that if those key institutions were willing to take on the witness responsibility, that it would certainly lend credibility to the whole chain. Probably need to be convinced first that that's something that they should do.
Well, Bitcoin, what they do is they completely divorce the block holders from the block users, and they keep them apart, and that's how they don't corrupt each other. A corporation would generally trend to put them underneath a jurisdictional body. Somewhere in the middle, we would have what we're talking about.
And I think there's a lot of merit to that, and then I think that pushes a little bit of the question of the selection of those societies, and how is that done? And maybe because does that selection process itself perhaps become perhaps too centralized itself?
Okay, well, co-creator is going to be our governance guy, so maybe it's a good time for him to poke his head into this.
Well, you mentioned competing company that I work for. You mentioned UL. They're in the safety testing business and they make standards. The organization I work for only tests safety according to standards. Of course, all these
in addition to that, I think.
Can you hear me?
I gotta tell you.
Yes, I can hear you, co-creator.
Okay, sorry, there was a comment from the sideline. All these organizations are competing in the market for customers and better service, but they collaborate on the technical level. So that's no small feat. And the ISO organizations, the International Electrotechnical Commission and others have working groups for any kind of fields, from the way how to write standards to how to test drones, which is one of the newer topics. They build agreements. It's a long and arduous process. It's paid by the users paying for the standards. That's a book publishing model that is at the end of its useful life, I believe. And but it's institutions that do work, that help society, because standardization reduces cost for everyone.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So I could go on. Can you comment on this? Is there other aspects you would like to know?
I'm just really interested, because this is actually the next thing on our agenda for things to do is governance model. What is our governance model? We saw EOS go into a flaming tailspin because they got it wrong and they have to go fix it now. We've seen a lot of organizations just get really gummed up on that governance model. So whether we're going to solve the problem now, I'm not certain, but I'm very certain that we've got the right team on board to look at this thing. Between the folks on this team and the folks we have access to, I think we can come up with a solution for that.
I think the standards are critical, and I've been involved in just working interoperability standards with computers, ISO and PETAS Inc. and other efforts. Leveraging that and how to do that and make those institutions relevant again would really be in everybody's best interest.
And maybe that's what they need. They actually, because I know the NSPE is kind of struggling with membership. They're struggling with relevance. They're struggling with a lot of these things. And again, they're battling fake news, and that's the big challenge. That's the point in space we're trying to secure.
Yeah. And,
go ahead.
One thing to add about governance, we need it on two levels. One is our own verification validation process, which needs to have impartial oversight, which in the standardization organizations and in the test houses that use standards is provided via a mechanism required in the accreditation standards. This is accreditation itself, and it's an impartiality committee, which is industry representatives, including their customers, who have an oversight function. So that part we can copy one-on-one. There's nothing new. It works for us because it's among people, and we are basically running a similar process like a testing organization. Where it's completely different is on the blockchain itself, and that governance, I think we need to follow some other aspects.
But we have to sandbox ourselves. We have to sandbox what exists and what works. It's not going to be the same, but it has to be at least within the similitude, I think is the word that comes to mind. The math for one has to work for the math of the other.
Dan?
Yeah.
I think that the whole idea of trust is very interesting, especially when in regards to what we're trying to do. And also with your question as it relates to the witness nodes, I think that it will add a lot of notoriety and just value to those consortium members to have witness notes, or even if it's not the consortium members who have those. But just imagine those entities being able to then give out certifications. So in essence, you're gaining or you're validating, and then also you're giving out trust. I don't know how you can give out trust, but I guess you're developing trust when there are large organizations that then validate certain certifications. What it does that just an individual in validating another individual is that it has so much experience, and usually large corporations, a lot of people know about them, so they already have this intrinsic value within it. So just imagine a large corporation or multitude of corporations who have those witness notes, who then also have the ability to validate claims in such a way that you're now given digital certifications in a sense. I think that's a huge step towards building trust.
Now, one of our newer members here is Carlos Gonzalez, and he's in Mexico at CETIS University. And I don't know if anybody knows about CETIS. They were actually the pioneers of international accreditation long before MIT, long before everybody else got into it. Their rector, who was the provost at the time, Dr. Fernando Leon. He really pioneered that stuff. So they're very well versed in that. So we're going to be leaning on them to give us that null hypothesis, because they will be operating in the absence of a lot of these institutions that we're trying to augment. So that would give us a very good data point. So Carlos is here, has been here for a while, and we'll be soon engaging and hearing his position on the subject, I'm sure. Wow, great meeting, guys. What do you think? Is any more questions, or you want to go to an after party now? That's what we call it.
I go to bed now. It's 11 o'clock here.
Okay, so I'm going to get off and get my kids up. We're going to go off and go see the monuments around Washington, D.C. and all that. So keep up the good work. We're going to we're just stay on the line if you want to keep on talking to folks, get these issues together. And next week, there'll be a lot of progress. This week, there was a great amount of progress. And next week, please expect more. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Gene, for coming. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Dan.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Gene and Dan.
Okay, best to get off. Best to end stream.